All right.
Here we are.
Yeah, Joey, thank you for joining us at the Right on Crime podcast studio here in Boise, Idaho. It's a pleasure having you join us today. I know you are a huge advocate for second chances and second chance hiring, and I'm glad that you're going to be here today telling us about why you are such a huge proponent for second chance hiring. We're going to get to hear a little bit about your story and why you are such a huge advocate. So hoping you can give us a little bit about your background. I know a lot of us here in the Boise area know you for your leadership in the community. You are really successful in your career. You're a general sales manager at a local car dealership. You're a mentor. You're a family man. You do a lot for the community, but we get to kind of peel back the curtain and get to know a little bit more about you. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit about you and your background, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I'm excited, right? I definitely am a big advocate for it only because I've been there, right? I have the experience that most people don't have, right? I can tell you, so I'm born and raised, I'm 41 years old, but I was born and raised right here in Boise. So I grew up here, seen the city go from, the population it once was, and where Overland and Cloverdale was farmland, and now it's houses, right? And more communities and more people, right? So went to school here, graduated high school from Centennial, went to Boise State for a couple of years, and got in the automotive industry when I was 19 years old was my first year. I appreciate you guys having me. I definitely, I can tell you this, the second chance hiring program and what it brings is probably more beneficial than people realize, both for the individuals that need that second chance and the employers, only for several benefits. Some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life were in prison, truthfully. I had a great childhood, and I made some mistakes, got addicted to opiates, and I've been clean and sober now 16 years. So
That's good for you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work. I ended up spending 3.5 years in prison, and most people that I meet don't talk about it that much, right? Only because it's not something I'm proud of, but I can tell you it's what made me who I am, right? And I wouldn't take that away for the world, right? I truly believe that. Most people, when they get out for the first time, they're, in a tough place, right? They don't have family support or friends or people that can help them. All they can rely on is unfortunately, the people that they met in prison, right? And that's not always a bad thing if you have the right group of people out there. And if you have the right support system. But if you don't, sometimes that second chance is what somebody needs. And instead of looking at the paper and what the paper says, look at the person. And I'm a firm believer in that.
What did that second chance look like for you as you were, done with finishing serving your sentence and reentering society?
So I got out at the time. My girlfriend, Chelsea, now my wife, she was with me the whole step of the way. Big part of, I give a ton of the support to her, right? Because if I didn't have her, I don't know where I'd be, right? But when I got out, I can tell you this, as a felon, you have to fill that out on every job application that you go to. And I think a lot of people think that they need to be dishonest, right? And not say the truth when we all know the employers are going to find out either way, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's better to be forthcoming and say what really you've been through. And I think that experience can make a person, right? And I can tell you for myself, when I got out, I had obviously no money. They have programs and stuff in there. I did a therapeutic community which was an extensive amount of time, 9 months, right, in a tier where we hold each other accountable, inmates basically counseling themselves. And of course there's counselors and staff involved, but it's supposed to be like, real life examples. And, while I did that therapeutic community, I can tell you, I didn't think that I was any more prepared than I was, the day I got out. I feel like I was not as prepared as I was hoped for the employment world. Right. Mm. I had experience in sales. I had experience in, I had served, I had bartended, I had done several different jobs. And, my goal was, I knew I was driven, right? And I knew that I had learned a lot about myself while I was in prison and also matured a lot. Right. So I felt like I had a lot to offer somebody, but, to be able to get that chance is tough. So I reached out, I work for Dennis Dillon, and I reached out to, my former boss that I had worked for years prior at Dennis Dillon, Vern Caldwell. And he actually is the guy that said, "Hey, yeah, come down, apply. What's the worst they can say?" Right. So I think it's all about someone's willpower and, how much drive do they have? And if somebody's willing to go to the end, agree to try to get something, a new job or whatever, if they don't have a trade that they're good at, there's programs in prison that prepare them for that. So they have something else. Right. But I was basically doing programming for a good majority of the time in prison. So
now being a manager, general sales manager, overseeing employees and being a part of a leadership team at a company who does participate in second chance hiring. You've now been on twofold, right?
Yep.
Somebody who's benefited from leaders who have provided you a second chance, as well as being a manager who has seen the opportunity with employees that have come into reporting to you or reporting to others as part of your leadership team. Give us some insights into what does that look like? What does it look like when you are considering hiring somebody? And I know that we've had conversations. You've been a part of an effort that we are kicking off here locally with other business leaders who are considering becoming second chance hiring or hirers, or even just formalizing efforts that they're currently doing or having underway within their companies. But what does that look like for somebody that hasn't considered doing that before? What does that mean for you and for Dennis Dillon?
I'd say at first, a lot of employers probably look at the application before they look at the person, or they look at the resume, and if they see that they check the box, yes, felony, and they list all of their felonies that they've committed and or whatever crimes they might be, if they're honest about it, it's kind of shocking to the employer, right? For somebody, myself, I have the experience, right? So being a person that was in those shoes and had to check that box, and also now being on the other side of it, and a little bit about my history. I've been with Dennis Dillon now 15 years, almost 15, 14 and a half, right? But I started as a sales associate, right? And got promoted to floor manager, was a floor manager for a year, got promoted to a desk manager, was a desk manager for 7 years, right? And then became the general sales manager, and have now been doing that for 6, right? And I get a lot of them because it's funny. It's like the word of mouth travels, right? And when people know that you're felon friendly, or that you'd consider somebody with a background, they send other people, right? The community and the word spreads very fast. And, we've had so many, I could go on and on and on about the success stories and the amount of people that I can tell you that have changed their lives and changed their families' lives and all that. But it's tough at the very beginning, because I've had some that I look, even myself through my experience, years later, I'm looking at an application and I see these, they're bad charges, right? And I try to be like, hey, listen, don't judge that, because you don't know 5 years ago when they committed these crimes, or a few years ago when they committed these crimes, that the person that sits in front of you today isn't completely different and hasn't changed. And so I'd say, like, as a new employer that's considering hiring people with a background, just keep an open mind, right? Mm-hmm. And try not to judge the person based on what their credentials shows or what their history shows, right, before you meet them.
Very true. Another element for employers is also understanding that their employees sometimes need certain supports around them, needing to be able to take time off in order to check in with their parole officer, for example. What does that look like for an employer who is considering becoming a second chance hire?
I've always just kept the philosophy that their parole comes first, right? Even before their job. So if their parole officer is asking them to come to a meeting, go to classes, whatever that is, I always let that take priority. And I can tell you, it's nothing like super. It's never, it doesn't ever seem like it's something that crazy to work around, because you're talking, 1, maybe 2 days a week that they've got to leave for a couple hours or leave early. So it definitely, at certain jobs, right, you do have to work around that, but that's all temporary. Once they're completed, they don't have to do that. So it's, and it's another goal, right? Another thing for somebody to look forward to. And, it helps keep them accountable, right? If, first Idaho probation and parole, if they know you're, as an employer, going to support them and what they do, right? They'll do anything they can. They don't, they want to help these guys keep these jobs too. They don't want to impact that as well. So that's what I would say. They try to treat us the same way I would do for them.
That's great. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of business leaders and people in general here in Idaho, the most of us, we don't realize that Idaho has such a high incarceration rate. And the other side of that is, the majority of people that are incarcerated, we're talking high 90%, 95, 96, 98% of people that are incarcerated are going to serve their sentence and are going to be reentering society. And so these are people that are going to be reentering the job pool and be available to be a part of our workforce and hopefully find very meaningful careers. So when we think about this, for available jobs that need to be filled and for businesses that are needing to find those workers, what are your thoughts around? Well, I already know we've talked about this, and I know you just light up when we talk about second chance hiring, but what is your message for those employers when they're, considering maybe for the first time, even thinking about what second chance hiring could be for them?
I would say some of the best employees that I've had over the course of the last, 14 years at Dennis Dillon have been people with records. And some of the smartest people, some of these people have spent the time that they were incarcerated. They've chose their time wisely, right? Mm-hmm. They've focused on certain things and reading and really trying to educate themselves to where when they get out, they have these tools. And these guys are like, some of them, especially in the sales industry, like they're very driven. And they've been incarcerated for a long period of time. Some of them shorter, right? But you're surrounded around so many different types of personalities and in prison, and you really have to kind of mold, right? To whatever that might be, right? Like different people and how they feel about things and what they say and how they react. And that's why I feel like in the sales industry, some of the most gifted people I've ever met as far as how they speak and what they say have came from incarceration. And also, from fixed operations at our dealership, right? And like service, even that, like we have a couple master techs that have had pretty severe backgrounds and needed a second chance at one point are still with us. Several other leaders other than myself that are, were incarcerated at one point, got out, found a purpose, right? And their purpose might have just been at first their job. That's, their one thing that's like their savior, their thing that they care more about is their career and how to continue to advance in the real world. You have to have income, and these people are driven to get it, especially if they're behind, right? In their mind, it's like, hey, I got incarcerated when I was young. Luckily I learned when I was young, but some people get out when they're 45, 50 years old and they don't have a 401k and they don't have so the drive is what I'd say. Some of the best, most driven people and smartest, like most talented, hardest working, best, attitude people I've ever met, truly came from being incarcerated.
I'm so glad you said that because, we see and we can read about the statistics that speak to that as well. But you having the experience of actually hiring people and seeing that firsthand, and, you truly are a testament to that yourself. So I think that's fantastic. And I know that as I've talked to business leaders about this effort that we are launching here in Idaho, the number of business leaders that instead of, kind of pushing back or asking questions or seeming confused around why would we get involved in second chance hiring, they're actually leaning in. They're wanting to be a part of it. They understand why now, especially because, it makes sense. There is a workforce cliff that we're all facing.
Yep.
Finding employees is difficult. So from a business perspective, it makes sense. But also the number of, 1 in 3 people, you look at the numbers, 1 in 3 people have some sort of a record behind them. So it's people that we actually know in our home communities. The number of people, these business leaders that I have spoken to that do have somebody on their team that have some sort of a record where they can say firsthand that it's been a positive experience for them as well. I know one of the other things that we've talked about are some of the barriers that people experience, especially in a rural state like Idaho. Real challenges like transportation. When you're re-entering society, when you've come out of prison, you've served your time, you're making no money, you have no money in the bank. Having transportation to get to a job, having housing. What does that look like for? And I know that you've, with some of the people that you've employed, what does that look like? Do you have any of those experiences that you can share from those that you've supported?
I have several, right? But I just had one a few days ago. A guy came to me. He's been with me for 1 year. It was 1 year a couple days ago, right? He came to me and he told me, he was like, "Hey, Joey, I just want to share something with you. When I first started, you guys always dress nice at work, and I had nothing. I came here and they said, hey, if you want to try to get a job, you need to look nice, right? And somebody else he knew, an acquaintance, said, here's, $50, go try to make yourself presentable for your interview. And he told me that was the only $50 he had, right? And a year later, the guy's just bought a brand new home, has a new car, he was just telling me how grateful he is, right? Wow. And the gratefulness and that feeling of a bigger purpose, right? And they finally find something that they're like, hey, this is my chance, right? This is my chance. This job could be their chance, and there's a lot of support, especially out there for like housing. They have all kinds of like different halfway and transitional housing programs that people can get housing out of incarceration at a, where they're paying $500 to $800 monthly rent. And they rent a room in the house. And, but I'd say the biggest thing is like, sometimes if you think you've had an employee that'll go to the nth degree to try to get the job done for you, wait till you have somebody that's trying to prove themselves and show you that you made a good decision, and we've had failures too. I mean, there's obviously people that relapse and they make poor decisions. And obviously the more people that you hire that have backgrounds or that history, that will happen. But I think that would also happen if they weren't incarcerated. I mean, it probably happens all the time with people that are not, not have criminal records to the point to where they're, basically, if somebody comes in right now and they have a criminal record, I know this, they have accountability, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're on parole. They have to be accountable for parole. Normally they're very driven, very, and they have a purpose, and sometimes that second chance is like part of that purpose. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's people out there that, say, oh, I'd never hire felons, right? Period. I wouldn't do it. Right. And all I can say is that they're really missing out, right? They're really missing out on some talented people that could help their organization or company grow.
As an employer who provides second chance hiring, can you speak to any of the tax benefits?
Yes. I can tell you this and I don't know exactly what the tax law is, right? But I can tell you that there is benefits for somebody that has been incarcerated and comes to work for the company. And, what I've also noticed is the more people that I hire that have backgrounds, they hold each other accountable, right? Like everyone's on the same path and trying to do good. And when somebody slips off, it's obvious, right? So that's where it's really benefited us as a company, is to see people, that know what it looks like to fall, right? And I mean, I can countless examples, right? Real life examples of people that have struggled while being, getting out, right? They think they get it all figured out. They got their job, they're starting to do good. And then 6 months later, life hits them, and that is, that's something that you got to be able to help them, not just give up on them, but help them. Right. And obviously somebody can only, as an employer, you can only do so much, right? You can't go out of your way to try to, be involved in their personal life, but just the job and the knowing and the security of having somebody that is behind you and believes in you because they've seen what you've done has been, another big motivator for people to stay sober. I mean, and do the right thing when needed.
Absolutely. And that's where that contributes to safe communities, which is a huge priority of Right on Crime, is to contribute to promoting safe communities, which second chance hiring absolutely does. And it's a huge reason why it's one of our main focuses here in Idaho, and why we have launched and helped really take a focus on the opportunity that we have here to bring businesses around this effort here locally, and really appreciate your voice and your leadership to bring people around the table and to talk about why it's so important to create these pathways for employment, not just for the businesses, which makes business sense, as we've talked a little bit about today,
for sure,
but about the opportunity also for individuals. These are people that may have, made a bad decision or a handful of bad decisions, but through the ability for somebody to give them a second chance, it truly can be transformative for their lives, as well as the people all around them and generations to come as well. So thank you. Thank you, Joey. Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you for joining us today at the Right on Crime studio.